Meet Gene Ric, a man with zero talent for anything and who was unfortunately awoken in a strange place with no memories of his past. Finally coming to his senses, Gene stammers around the empty house confused, asking himself, where is he? Who brought him there? All attempts to remember anything gives him a headache. Realizing he has no clothes, Gene rushes to find something to wear while taking note of all his surroundings. Looking outside, Gene realizes he has no idea where he is and opts to explore, thinking moving is better than standing around. Eventually, Gene comes across other individuals and thinks he could ask for directions, but quickly finds out they are not what they seem. Fearing for his life, Gene attempts to run and seek shelter in a nearby shack, but he's too weak to lift any of the windows open. Believing he was out of options, Gene's instinct to fight activates as he decides to tackle the threat in front of him. Taking a minute to catch his breath, Gene was feeling a lot all at once: confusion, shock, disbelief. One question came across his mind though: how are they out here? Gene knew he couldn't get the answers to his questions immediately, but one thing's for certain: he needed supplies in order to survive. He breaks the shed window, injuring his hand in the process, but arms himself with metal bars and pipes. Little did Gene know, a small flame of anger has been ignited due to his encounter, and that flame only continues to rise after each subsequent encounter. Eventually, he finds himself what seems like fairgrounds or a farmer's market. He merely takes notice of a car, but some undead are blocking his path. Inspecting the vehicle, he breathes a sigh of relief, knowing it has gas, but unfortunately, there's no key to be found. Gene thinks to himself, someone must have a key, and opts to check the event grounds by starting with the med tent in the middle. Also hoping to find something for his hand, he enters to find a patient still occupying it. At this point, Gene's body is reaching his limits, so he decides to search one of the trailers before heading back to the house he awoke in. Successfully making it back, Gene slowly gives in to what his body is telling him. He bathes to remove the blood and changes clothes and hop into bed. He hopes that tomorrow this whole thing will all be a really nasty dream. Gene wakes up and is immediately hit with a wave of anxiety. He finally understands what he went through yesterday was real and that he needs to plan fast, but way too many thoughts race through his mind and he's unable to think clearly. He gets dressed and checks his wound, only to find that it healed overnight. Once again stepping outside, Gene is overwhelmed by a thick fog engulfing his surroundings, impairing his vision, though that doesn't stop our wanderer from exploring what's nearby. Stumbling upon a house, he attempts to get inside, but he's unable to lift the window, so he tries for a more aggressive approach. Seeing this place has food, Gene indulges himself and then checks the nearby cabinets and shelves. He finds some beginner books and decides to wait out the fog by reading. Once exiting the house, Gene scans his surroundings, noticing a car and a few undead lurking nearby it. After a quick inspection, Gene is happy to have found a key to this car. He goes to take a break in the house, noting that all he needs is to siphon fuel from the other car he found yesterday, and he is on the move. Looking up the street, he notices another car and decides to check it out, but no key or gas are in it. Gene loses interest and decides to avoid the nearby houses, but notices something familiar. What seems like a person wearing a black hazmat suit, and it seems to leave Gene very uncomfortable, and he decides to quickly scurry away. Moving south, Gene encounters another one of the undead guarding a house, but quickly kills it. In fear of attracting a nearby horde, he decides to not break any of their windows. Instead, Gene makes his way to the nearby storage buildings, only to find fruit and vegetables waiting for him. Noticing his body is reaching its limits, Gene decides to not walk back, but to take refuge in the tool shed and finds an interesting weapon in the tool cabinet. A small smile forms across his face as he thinks of what he could do with that weapon if he had the proper strength.